Tom was used to having everything easily, money, women, and power. But when he accepted a seemingly simple bet to win over Lara, a waitress who wasn't impressed by fortune or status, he discovered something his money could never buy. There was just one problem. Lara had no idea that in the beginning it was all just a game. Now, with his heart on the line and the truth about to explode, Tom has to decide whether it's worth losing everything he owns for something he never thought he could feel: true love. The restaurant was packed that night, the sound of clinking glasses and lively conversation filling the sophisticated atmosphere. In the most secluded corner, Tom reclined in his leather chair, holding a glass of expensive whiskey while laughing at something one of his friends had just said. "You always do that," commented John, shaking his head. "What?" Tom arched an eyebrow, bored. "You effortlessly win over any woman. They fall at your feet as soon as they see your car, your watch." John twirled his finger in the air, emphasizing. "It's not my fault they like luxury," replied Tom, shrugging. "Ah, so you mean you can only win women over because you have money?" John smiled teasingly. Tom narrowed his eyes. John's challenging tone bothered him. He knew that his life was comfortable and that money opened doors, but he also considered himself charming and intelligent enough to win over any woman without having to show off his bank balance. "Does that sound like a challenge?" Tom leaned his elbows on the table, interested. "Maybe." John smiled. "How about a bet?" The other friends looked on, ready to have some fun at Tom's expense. "What kind of bet?" Tom asked, already feeling the adrenaline of the game. "You have to win a woman without using anything you have. No expensive cars, no luxurious dinners, no absurd gifts. Just you and your lip." Tom laughed, picking up his glass and taking a sip. "That's easy. I want to see you do it with her." John pointed discreetly at a waitress who was passing by the table holding a tray. Tom followed his friend's gaze and found Lara. She was wearing the restaurant's simple uniform, her hair tied up in a bun, a few loose strands falling over her face. Her gaze was serious, and she worked with precision, not wasting time with fake smiles for rich customers. "This one doesn't seem impressionable," commented one of her friends. "Even better," John smiled. "Let's see what you're really capable of." Tom watched as Lara attended to a nearby table. She seemed focused, oblivious to the stares she inevitably received from some of the customers. There was something about her that aroused his curiosity. "You're on." Tom smiled and stood up. He walked over to the counter where Lara was taking a new order. "Excuse me," he said, adopting his most charming tone. She looked at him for a second, then went back to what she was doing. "If you want to order something, just say so. I'm busy." The cold response took Tom by surprise. "I just wanted to know your name." Lara snorted and reached for a bottle of wine. "If I tell you, will you stop bothering me?" Tom smiled, finding the challenge funny. "It depends." She glanced at him briefly, then went back to her work. "Lara, now excuse me." Without giving him time to reply, she walked away, leaving Tom standing at the counter, puzzled. For once, a woman wasn't falling for his game, and he liked that. Tom returned to his table, feeling his friends' curious gazes on him. John smiled, amused by the scene. "That was quick," he teased. "She was done with you before you'd even finished your sentence." Tom leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms, pretending not to care. "I'm only just getting started." John shrugged, but kept a triumphant smile. Lara continued working, completely ignoring his presence. This irritated him and instigated him at the same time. He was used to women falling for his charm, but she didn't even pretend to be interested. When Lara passed by the table again, Tom seized the opportunity. "I could say that I've never been treated like this before, but I don't think you care." She stopped for a second and looked him in the eye. "Right. And I could say that I don't mind at all, but I think you get the idea." Tom's friends held back their laughter. He arched an eyebrow, surprised by the speed of her response. "Are you always like this with clients, or am I a special case?" Only with convinced customers, she replied, picking up the empty plates from the next table. And what makes me cocky? Lara sighed, pausing for a moment. You have this attitude of thinking that everything and everyone is here to serve you. Your tone, the way you speak, everything screams arrogance. Tom gave a wry smile. So you've already analyzed me and concluded all this in a few minutes? Impressive. It wasn't difficult, she replied, before walking away once more. Tom watched as she went to another table, without paying any more attention to him. You're losing badly, John mocked, sipping his wine. I haven't even started yet. But the truth was that Tom was more intrigued than he had expected. Not only was Lara unimpressed with him, she seemed to take a subtle pleasure in challenging his confidence. He needed to change his approach. Some time later, when Lara returned to the counter, Tom got up and went over again, this time without the arrogance of before. I know I'm annoying you, he began. Great insight, she replied without looking at him. But what if I want to change that impression? Lara finally faced him, crossing her arms. Do you really want to spend your time trying to impress me? Let's just say I like a challenge. She laughed lightly, but her gaze remained skeptical. Right. So tell me, if you weren't in a fancy restaurant with your friends, where would you be right now? Tom hesitated for a second. No woman had ever asked him anything like that. Probably at some business event or party. Exactly what I imagined, she said, picking up a tray and leaving again. Tom smiled to himself. This time, instead of feeling frustrated, he felt something new. Lara made him want to be better. Tom wasn't used to having to work so hard for someone, but the more Lara ignored him, the more interested he became. Over the next few days, he went to the restaurant discreetly, observing her from a distance, without trying to approach her directly. Lara worked with an admirable intensity. She was always focused, efficient, but maintained a gentle attitude towards everyone around her. For Tom, watching her interact naturally was fascinating, an open window to something he had never really known: authenticity. One evening, sitting alone in a secluded corner of the salon, Tom saw Lara being called a rude name by an impatient man in a suit. The customer was tapping his fingers irritably on the table, attracting attention from nearby tables. "Hey, you!" the man shouted to Lara, who immediately approached with professional calm. "Right, sir. I ordered that food 10 minutes ago. That's terrible service," grumbled the man, visibly exasperated. Lara took a deep breath, trying to keep control. "I apologize for the delay, sir. The kitchen is a bit overloaded tonight. Can I get you something while you wait? I want to speak to the manager." "Now," demanded the customer, standing up and pointing his finger rudely at Lara. Tom felt something stir inside him. Before he could even think, he was on his feet, crossing the hall to the table. "Or maybe you could talk to someone who really cares about this ridiculous attitude. Like a therapist, perhaps," Tom interjected firmly, giving his client a hard stare. A sudden silence fell over the restaurant. Lara's eyes widened in surprise at the unexpected intervention. The arrogant customer was paralyzed for a moment, surprised and visibly uncomfortable with the situation. The people around him started whispering. "Who do you think you are to talk to me like that?" the man replied, trying to maintain some dignity, but already disconcerted by the reaction around him. Tom held his gaze calmly. Someone with enough education to know that problems with the restaurant don't give you the right to disrespect someone who is working hard to serve you. Perhaps you need to reevaluate what it means to be polite. Visibly annoyed by the negative attention he had attracted, the customer mumbled something incomprehensible, grabbed his coat, and hurried out. A murmur of approval echoed among the tables, followed by a collective sense of relief. Lara stood by, watching as Tom discreetly returned to his table as if nothing had happened. Minutes later, she approached him, still surprised by the unexpected gesture. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly, although a slight smile of gratitude played on her lips. Tom looked up, meeting her gaze sincerely for the first time since they had met. "I don't like to see people being mistreated, especially you." She arched her eyebrows slightly, trying to hide the smile that was growing on her face. "And since when do you care about anyone but yourself?" Tom let out a low laugh, accepting the comment with unusual humility. "Maybe I'm just getting started." Lara watched him for a few more seconds, as if looking for something hidden behind that attitude, but she didn't find it. For the first time, Tom didn't seem to be playing games. He seemed real, human, and genuine. "Maybe I was wrong about you," she finally admitted, tucking a loose lock of hair behind her ear. Tom smiled, feeling that in that instant, something had definitely changed between them. It was no longer just a bet, a challenge, or a game. It was the start of something real, something he hadn't even imagined could happen. That night, Tom left the restaurant with a strange but comfortable certainty. Lara was slowly breaking down all his defenses, and for the first time, he didn't want to resist. When she finished her shift that night, Lara walked to the back parking lot of the restaurant. Normally, her thoughts would be focused on the next day's tasks or the bills she needed to pay, but this time, it was different. Her mind was still stuck on what had happened hours before. She had never imagined that she would see Tom, the arrogant and self-confident customer, defending her in such a direct way. Everything about him seemed theatrical, too scripted, except for that moment. Tom's expression as he faced the rude customer was different, authentic, almost vulnerable. For the first time, Lara saw something in him beyond his carefully constructed facade, and it intrigued her deeply. As she took her keys out of her pocket, she heard a voice coming from the restaurant entrance. "Hey, Lara, wait a minute." She turned around, surprised to see him there. Tom was walking slowly towards her, his hands in his pockets, a calm and sincere expression on his face. It was a far cry from the smug look he always displayed. "Are you still here?" she asked, trying to maintain a neutral tone. "I wanted to make sure you were okay after what happened," he replied, stopping a few steps in front of her. His eyes showed a genuine concern that Lara hadn't expected to see. She took a deep breath, trying not to let the impact of the situation show. "You didn't have to do that, Tom. I know how to deal with difficult clients." He smiled and shook his head. "I don't doubt it. I can see that you can handle anything, but I couldn't just watch, not when someone was treating you like that." Lara held his gaze, wondering if there was some other intention hidden in those words. Tom noticed the doubt in her eyes and took a deep breath before speaking again. "I know what you're thinking. That arrogant guy who first came in here. That's exactly who I've always been. And maybe I still am. But today I realized that I don't like that guy so much." She arched an eyebrow, curious. "So you'd admit you were arrogant?" Tom gave a short laugh, running his hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable but sincere. "I'd admit that I've never had any reason not to be. Life has always treated me too well. I learned early on that the world revolves around me, or at least that's what I thought for too long. But lately, I've discovered that maybe I was wrong." Lara remained silent, absorbing those unexpected words. There was an almost painful sincerity in the way Tom spoke. Something in him was changing, and she couldn't ignore it. "Why are you telling me all this?" she finally asked. Tom took a deep breath, looking straight into her eyes without hesitation. "Because you were the first person who didn't believe this superficial version of me. From the first moment we spoke, you saw something deeper, something I hadn't even noticed myself. And that touched me, Lara. It's still messing with me." Silence fell between them, filled with something new and delicate. Lara felt her heart beating faster, while at the same time trying not to lose her mind. She wasn't naive. She knew that men like Tom rarely changed, but the vulnerability he showed was too genuine to ignore. "I'm not used to seeing people like you caring about someone like me," she murmured, breaking the silence. "People like me," Tom repeated, curious. "People who have everything, money, fame, status. People who look at the world as an amusement park where everything is allowed." Tom nodded slowly, understanding what she meant. His voice came out softer when he answered, "Maybe I was like that, yes, but the amusement park loses its fun when you realize that you're always alone." Lara took a deep breath, unable to hide the impact of the words. Without realizing it, she moved a little closer to him, trying to read something beyond those sincere eyes. "Are you saying all this because you expect something from me?" Tom smiled gently, shaking his head. "No. I'm saying it because, for the first time, I want to be honest. With you, with myself. I'm not used to dealing with real feelings, but I think it's worth a try." Lara crossed her arms in an attempt to protect herself, but her resistance was weakening. Tom had managed for the first time to break through her emotional armor. "Why should I believe you?" He took a step forward, approaching her carefully. "You don't have to believe me now. Just give me the chance to prove that I can be different." Lara felt the intensity of the unspoken promise between them. Her heart urged her to believe, but her reason begged her to be cautious. She looked at him deeply, searching for a flaw, but she couldn't find one. All she saw was someone willing to be better. "All right," she finally said, almost in a whisper. "I'll give you this chance, but don't waste it." Tom cracked a sincere smile, relieved and happy, as if he had received a priceless prize. "I won't waste it. I promise." That night, as she walked away towards her car, Lara felt like she had just taken a leap in the dark. It was a big risk, but for the first time, she felt it would be worth it. Tom could be complicated, perhaps even dangerous emotionally, but something inside her wanted to believe that this time it would be different. And maybe it really would be. Tom spent the next few days carefully planning every step he would take with Lara. For the first time in his life, he was really concerned about what someone thought of him, not because of the status he could achieve, but simply because he genuinely wanted to win her over. The bet was no longer his main motivation. In fact, he had almost forgotten about it. His goal was now simple and clear, to prove that he was worthy of a woman like Lara. One quiet morning he decided to invite her out for a different kind of walk, something that would show her a side of him that no one had ever seen before. It was time to make it clear that he didn't need luxury or ostentation to impress her. Lara deserved something authentic. At the end of her shift, Tom was waiting outside the restaurant, dressed casually, without any extravagant clothing that might reveal his financial status. Lara came out of the restaurant and smiled when she saw him, surprised to find him there. "I thought today was my day off from you," she joked, but her smile revealed that she was happy to see him. "I'm not sure you'll have a day off any time soon," replied Tom, smiling lightly and sincerely. "I wanted to ask you to go out with me today. Something simple." Lara arched an eyebrow, curious. "Simple? Do you really know how to do that?" "I think I'm learning," he admitted shamelessly. Intrigued, Lara agreed and followed him to his car, which this time wasn't the flashy sports car she'd come to expect from him, but an ordinary, discreet vehicle. She watched him curiously as he drove away, without revealing the final destination of the ride. After a few minutes, they arrived at a small park, away from the city. It was a modest, wooded place, with a few wooden benches scattered among old trees and a calm lake, reflecting the clear skies of the day. Lara looked around and then at Tom, surprised by his choice. "You don't look like you frequent places like this," she commented with a slightly teasing tone. Tom gave her a shy smile, truer than any she had ever seen on him. "And you don't look like you like clichés. But here we are." She smiled, feeling touched by the sincerity of the moment. They walked slowly, enjoying the comfortable silence of the surroundings, feeling the gentle wind and the warmth of the sun passing through the leaves. Little by little, Lara's defenses began to drop even more. They sat on one of the benches next to the lake, watching some ducks swimming peacefully. Tom took a deep breath, feeling a slight anxiety grow inside him. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone before?" he asked hesitantly. Lara turned to him, interested and surprised. "Of course you can." He hesitated for a moment before finally speaking. When I was a child, before I became who I am today, my life was very different. We had no money. We lived in a small, very simple house. My parents worked hard to build what we have now, and after we achieved all this, I ended up forgetting what it was like to be that child who didn't need much to be happy. Lara listened attentively, sensing the genuine emotion in his voice. "Do you regret that?" she asked softly. He looked away for a moment at the lake, before turning back to her with sincerity in his eyes. "I didn't know until I met you. I guess you did. I forgot what it was like to appreciate the little things. You made me realize that I was living an empty life that no amount of money can fill." Lara was silent for a few seconds, absorbing his words. "I never imagined hearing you say something like that," she said at last, almost whispering. "I didn't even imagine saying something like that one day," Tom admitted with a slight smile. "But you've awakened something in me, Lara. Something real. Something I don't want to hide anymore." She smiled shyly, feeling her defenses completely crumble. For the first time since they had met, she allowed herself to believe that he really had changed. "Can I ask you something too?" Lara asked, looking at him deeply. "Of course. Why me? Why did someone like you, who could have everything and everyone he wanted, choose the waitress who barely paid any attention to you?" Tom smiled softly, looking her straight in the eye. "Because you were the first person who didn't look at me as a trophy or a means of achieving something. You saw me for real, with all my flaws and arrogance. You were the first person who made me want to change, and I realized that I needed to prove to you that I could be someone better." Lara felt her heart race at his words. There was no denying it. She was deeply involved. It wasn't the rich man. It wasn't the superficial conqueror. It was Tom, with his vulnerabilities exposed.